picture this. You're getting ready for this meeting about, like the global tech scene and what's happening. And bam, Japan just like drops this major announcement. They're putting restrictions on exporting some pretty serious high-tech stuff. We're talking like the building blocks of like the crazy innovation we see today. And that's exactly what we're going to like dive into today. Why this move by Japan like actually matters. Not just for like, the big tech giants, but maybe even for you. Our guide for this deep dive is this recent article from Tom's Hardware. They're a pretty reliable source in the tech world.
What I find really interesting here is that Japan isn't, restricting just any old chips. These are like essential components for some of the most advanced technologies out there. Stuff that could totally like reshape the world as we know it.
Okay, so break it down for us. What are we talking about here? What's got everyone freaking out?
First off, we've got cryo coolers. I know that might sound like something straight out of Star Wars, but these things are absolutely crucial for quantum computing. Imagine like instead of taking thousands of years to solve these super complicated problems, a computer could do it in like seconds. That's the potential we're talking about here with quantum computers.
Right.
Like designing life-saving drugs way faster, creating materials with like crazy properties we've never even seen before. And Japan is like putting the brakes on exporting a key component needed for all of that.
Wow, that's wild. Okay, so cryocoolers check.
Yeah.
What else is on Japan's restricted list?
Next up, we've got advanced processors. The brains behind these super complex systems, like, guided missile systems. And that's where things start to get a little geopolitical.
I see where you're going with this. This is where we see the bigger picture starting to form.
Exactly. And to add another layer, Japan's also restricting exports of lithography machines. Now, without getting too technical, these machines are like the behind-the-scenes wizards when it comes to making any kind of advanced chip. They use these insanely precise lasers to basically like etch circuits onto these silicon wafers. And the smaller and more intricate you can make those circuits, the more powerful and efficient the chip becomes. And guess what? Japan is a leader in this field, which gives them a lot of control over this like super important choke point in the global tech supply chain.
So Japan's holding some pretty powerful cards here. But the million-dollar question is why? What's pushing them to make this move?
Officially, Japan's saying that these restrictions are all about preventing this tech from being used for military purposes. They're saying they're not targeting any specific country. But it's hard to ignore like the whole backdrop of U.S.-China tensions. The U.S. has been tightening its own tech exports to China. And, Japan is a key ally of the U.S.
So you're saying it's tough to not see this move by Japan as part of a larger geopolitical strategy?
Exactly. The article we're looking at even mentions concerns from the U.S. about high-performance NVIDIA GPUs being re-exported to China. It's definitely possible that Japan is trying to get ahead of that.
Makes sense. And what about China? How are they reacting to all of this?
Well, let's just say they're not exactly thrilled. They've voiced their concerns pretty strongly, using terms like disrupting supply chains and hindering business. It's not just diplomatic talk. It's a clear sign that China sees this as a serious threat.
So we're seeing these restrictions like ripple outwards, creating tension on the global stage. But let's bring this back to our listeners for a sec. Why should they care about Japan restricting these tech exports? How can this potentially impact their lives?
That's the key question, right? One of the most immediate impacts could be like rising prices, basic economics. Less supply usually means higher prices. This could affect everything from the cost of like that new phone you've been wanting to the overall pace of innovation itself. Like imagine waiting even longer for the newest gadgets. Or a slowdown in the development of new groundbreaking technologies that could benefit all of us. These restrictions have the potential to touch a lot of aspects of our lives. And it's not just, consumer goods or whatever. This whole thing really highlights a much bigger trend. Technology is like the new battleground. Forget about, tanks and nukes. Controlling stuff like AI and quantum computing could be the key to like global power in this century.
So it's like this high-stakes race.
Yeah.
Where the prize is like technological dominance. And everyone's trying to get ahead.
Exactly. And Japan's move shows that it's not just the U.S. and China in the game anymore. Other countries are jumping in, trying to protect their own interests. And honestly, that could get messy. I mean, think about it. If Japan's willing to play hardball, what's stopping other countries from doing the same thing? We could end up in a future where, international collaboration on like groundbreaking tech just stops.
Right.
And it's replaced by this like fragmented and super competitive landscape.
That's kind of scary to think about. Okay, so we've got this global power struggle happening, but how does this actually affect like the average person? What does it mean for someone who's not, a tech CEO or a politician or something?
Well, that's where things get interesting. Remember those rising prices we were talking about? Well, that's just the beginning. Depending on your field, these restrictions could actually impact your job. Imagine industries like scrambling to become self-sufficient in tech production. That could lead to a huge demand for people with certain skills. On the other hand, some sectors might face challenges, like supply chains getting disrupted and important components becoming harder to get. It's hard to say for sure. It could go either way.
Okay, so we're talking like potential price increases,
Yeah.
changes in the job market, and maybe even like a slowdown in developing these life-changing technologies. This isn't just a tech story. It's a story about global power and economics, and ultimately the future we're all moving towards.
Exactly. And what we're seeing right now is only the start. As this tech race gets more intense, who knows what other restrictions or surprises are coming? Things are changing so fast. And staying informed is more important than ever.
I totally agree. This is definitely something we'll be keeping an eye on. But before we wrap up, what's like the one big takeaway you want our listeners to think about? What should really stick with them?
I think the question we all need to be asking ourselves is this. If Japan has a country that's known for being collaborative when it comes to technology, if they're starting to be more protectionist, what does that mean for the future of global innovation? Are we heading towards a world where technology is more isolated and used as a weapon? Or can we find a way to cooperate and make progress together? There's no easy answer, but it's definitely something we should all be thinking about.
That's a great point. It really shows how connected everything is. One country makes a move and the effects are felt all over the world, across different industries and even in our own lives. Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? Japan makes one move and suddenly everyone's feeling the effects, from like how much our gadgets cost to whether our jobs are safe. It shows you how connected like the whole global tech world is.
Definitely. And it brings up those big questions about, how we deal with all of this. We need to be aware and be able to adapt. And maybe even start thinking about how to make our own lives and careers more resilient.
For sure. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to how something that seems like, just a tech issue can have such a big impact. We've been talking about potential price increases and changes in the job market, and even the future of innovation itself. It's not just about tech. It's about global power and economics. And at the end, it's about our shared future.
Exactly. And as we've seen, this is a story that's still going.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a reminder that we need to stay informed and be part of these conversations, and maybe even start thinking about how we can, individually help shape a future where tech is used for good, not for conflict.
Well said. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive and for shedding light on this complex issue. It's given us all a lot to think about.
It's been my pleasure. These topics where tech and global affairs intersect are always fascinating.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has been insightful and maybe even a little bit eye-opening. Remember, in a world that's constantly changing, knowledge is power. Keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and until next time, stay curious.